I never realized how heavy silence could feel until I grew up in my father's house. He believed quiet meant discipline, that order and control were the marks of a strong family. For years I convinced myself that obedience was love, that his firm hand was a kind of guidance. But deep down, I always knew it was fear that kept me in line. Fear of disappointing him. Fear of being seen for who I really was. My name is Caleb Monroe, and I was 19 when everything began to unravel. Our small town was the kind of place where everybody waved at each other in the grocery store, where rumors traveled faster than the postman. People prided themselves on tradition, and tradition was exactly what my father worshipped. Richard Monroe was a man who carried himself like he owned the ground he walked on, tall, broad-shouldered, his voice clipped like a drill sergeant. He worked long hours at the mill, but when he came home, the house bent around him, as if even the walls knew better than to resist. I tried my best to play the role he set out for me, polite, hard-working, never questioned the rules. He wanted me to focus on college, on preparing for a future he imagined for me. But the more I followed, the more I felt like a shadow of myself, someone who lived but didn't really breathe. It was around that time I met Jonah Keller. He was the kind of guy who made a room feel lighter just by walking into it. We crossed paths in an American literature class at the community college. I remember the first day clearly. He sat 2 rows ahead, slouched in his chair, tapping a pencil against his notebook like he had better places to be. When the professor asked a question about Emerson, Jonah raised his hand lazily and gave an answer that was so sharp, so alive, it caught me off guard. He spoke with confidence, words tumbling out as though he didn't care what anyone thought. After class, I found myself walking behind him, rehearsing lines in my head, trying to figure out something to say that wouldn't sound foolish. He turned suddenly, flashing a grin, and said, "You're Caleb, right? You take notes like a court reporter. Mind if I borrow them sometime?" That was how it started. At first, it was just study sessions at the library. He'd spread his books out carelessly, cracking jokes, his voice warm and easy. But soon, those afternoons stretched into evenings, and evenings became nights when we'd drive out to the edge of town, park near the river, and just talk. I'd never known conversation could feel like flight. Each word opening up a space I never thought I'd be allowed to enter. Jonah had a reckless energy, the kind that made me feel both nervous and alive. He talked about leaving town one day, chasing music, maybe settling somewhere nobody knew his name. I listened, envy growing in me like a tide, because I had never once thought I could leave my father's orbit. I wasn't free enough. I wasn't brave enough. But around Jonah, I wanted to be. The closeness between us grew, subtle at first. The way he'd nudge my shoulder when he teased me. The way his eyes lingered a second too long when I laughed. I felt it, even if I couldn't name it. I'd never told anyone about the parts of myself I kept locked away, not even my best friends from high school. Yet somehow, Jonah seemed to see through me, as if he'd been waiting for me to admit something I couldn't. One evening, I came home later than usual. My father was sitting in his chair in the living room, a half-empty glass of bourbon in his hand. He glanced at the clock, then at me. "Where were you?" His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of judgment. "Studying." I lied, though the word burned my tongue. "With that boy again?" His tone sharpened. "What's his name, Keller?" I swallowed, forcing a nod. "Jonah. He's just helping me with class." My father leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. "I don't like him. He looks like trouble. You need to be careful about who you spend time with. Bad company ruins good character." I mumbled something like agreement, then escaped to my room, shutting the door behind me. My heart pounded. He didn't know anything, not really, but the suspicion in his voice unsettled me. It was as if he sensed the truth before I had even admitted it to myself. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I thought about Jonah's smile, about the way he made me feel more myself than I'd ever been. And I thought about my father's warning, how easily he could dismantle the fragile world I was just beginning to build. Over the next few weeks, the tension only grew. I found myself deleting Jonah's texts as soon as they came, glancing over my shoulder whenever my phone buzzed. I started lying more, excuses tumbling out too quickly, extra study hours, late library nights, group projects that didn't exist. Each lie left a stain on my conscience, but the pull toward Jonah was stronger than my guilt. One Friday evening, Jonah picked me up in his old pickup truck. We drove out of town, windows down, music spilling into the night. I felt freer than I had in years, as if the air itself was made for breathing. We sat by the riverbank, talking until the stars crowded the sky. At one point, he turned to me, his face soft in the moonlight, and said, "You know, you don't have to keep pretending around me." The words pierced me. I wanted to ask him what he meant, to push him away and pull him closer at the same time. But I stayed silent, trapped in the prison of my own fear. When I finally got home, my father was waiting again. This time he stood by the window, the curtain pulled aside as though he'd been watching for me. His jaw was tight, his voice clipped. "Out with Jonah again?" he asked. I hesitated too long, and that hesitation was answer enough. His eyes narrowed, something unreadable flashing across them. "I don't like the direction you're heading, Caleb. That boy's no good. You better start making better choices." I muttered goodnight and fled to my room, but the unease lingered. He didn't just disapprove. He was watching, calculating. I could feel it. For the first time, I realized that what I was hiding wasn't just fragile. It was dangerous. And the walls of my father's house were closing in faster than I could escape. The weeks that followed were a strange blend of exhilaration and dread, as if I were living two separate lives stitched together by lies. By day, I kept my head down, studying, pretending to be the son my father wanted me to be. By night, I slipped away into Jonah's world, a place where my laughter felt unchained and my heart finally beat in rhythm with something real. It began innocently enough, late-night drives with the radio low. Windows cracked, so the cool air swept through the cab. Jonah always had this way of making silence comfortable, like words weren't necessary when the moment was right. But then he'd glance at me with that half-smile, and suddenly silence felt charged, heavy with things neither of us dared to speak aloud. One night, parked near the old railway bridge, Jonah leaned back against the hood of his truck, staring at the stars. "You ever think about leaving this place?" he asked. His voice carried that restless energy that always seemed to hum beneath his skin. All the time, I admitted, surprised at myself. I hadn't meant to let the truth slip, but there it was. He turned to me, eyes sharp but kind. "So why don't you—" I looked down at my hands, fiddling with the loose thread on my sleeve. "Because of my dad. Because of everything he expects from me. Leaving would feel like betraying him." Jonah shook his head. "Caleb, living your own life isn't betrayal. Pretending to be someone you're not, that's the real betrayal." The words hit me harder than I expected, as though he had reached into my chest and named the ache I'd carried for years. I didn't respond, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Over time, our moments together deepened, shifting from casual companionship to something that defied labels. He'd brush past me in the library, fingers grazing mine, and the touch would linger longer than it should. We'd laugh until our sides hurt, our shoulders pressed together on the riverbank. Once, when a sudden summer rain soaked us both to the bone, Jonah grabbed my hand and pulled me through the downpour, his laughter echoing in the storm. I felt more alive in that instant than I ever had in my father's carefully ordered house. But with every stolen moment, the weight of secrecy grew heavier. I became adept at covering my tracks, deleting texts, fabricating excuses, masking smiles that lingered too long. My father noticed the changes, though. He'd ask pointed questions at dinner, his tone sharp but his eyes sharper. One evening, Jonah texted me, "Meet me by the river. I need to tell you something." My heart raced as I slipped out of the house, careful not to wake my father. When I reached the riverbank, Jonah was already there, hands shoved into his pockets, pacing. "What's wrong?" I asked, breathless from running. He looked at me, his expression serious in a way I hadn't seen before. "I can't keep pretending this is just friendship. Caleb, I like you. More than that. I've liked you since the first day I saw you scribbling notes like your life depended on it." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. My chest tightened, my pulse thundered in my ears. I wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, but the truth burned too bright. I... My voice broke. I swallowed, then whispered, I feel the same. For a moment, we just stood there, the confession hanging between us like fragile glass. Then Jonah stepped closer, closing the space until our shoulders brushed. The river murmured at our feet, and the night seemed to hush around us. I didn't move away. I couldn't. His presence felt like home in a way nothing else ever had. That night, as I walked back home, I couldn't stop smiling. My body felt light, buoyed by a secret joy that I couldn't share with anyone. But as soon as I reached the front porch, the smile vanished. My father's truck was parked outside, and through the window, I could see him at the kitchen table, sipping from a mug, waiting, watching. He glanced up when I entered, his expression unreadable. "Late again," he said. "Study group." I answered quickly, slipping past him toward my room. Was Keller there? His voice cut through the air like a blade. I froze, hand tightening on the stair rail. Yeah, he was. My father's jaw clenched, but he said nothing more. I escaped upstairs, but my skin prickled with unease. He knew I was lying. Maybe he didn't know the full truth yet, but he was circling it, closing in. From then on, paranoia shadowed every meeting with Jonah. When his truck idled outside, I'd peek through the blinds before rushing out. When his name flashed across my phone, I'd delete the message within seconds. But no amount of caution could smother the fire between us. One Saturday afternoon, we sat in the truck overlooking the hills, the summer heat pressing down on us. Jonah leaned closer, his voice low. "Caleb, you can't keep living in fear of him. You deserve better than that." I stared out the window, fighting the knot in my throat. It's not that simple. If he finds out, I don't even know what he'd do. Jonah placed a hand on my arm, steady and sure. Then let him. Whatever happens, you won't face it alone. His words settled into me, equal parts comfort and terror. Because deep down, I knew he was right. My father would find out sooner or later, and when he did, there would be no going back. That night, as Jonah dropped me off, his headlights sweeping across the darkened lawn, I caught sight of a shadow in the window. My father stood there, curtain pulled back, watching. His face was hidden by the darkness, but I felt his gaze, heavy and unyielding. My chest tightened with dread. I knew in that moment the fragile world Jonah and I had built was balanced on the edge of a knife, and sooner or later it was going to cut. It happened on a night that should have been ordinary. Jonah had asked if I wanted to go for a drive, and I agreed without hesitation. I needed the air, the space away from my father's scrutiny, the feeling that I could breathe without someone measuring each inhale. We drove with the windows down, the hum of the tires steady beneath us, the world outside cloaked in summer darkness. Jonah talked about music, about a song he'd been writing on his guitar. His words tumbled easily, but I wasn't listening as closely as I should have. My mind was split, half savoring the sound of his voice, half haunted by the image of my father watching us through the window, just nights before. Every mile we drove felt like stolen time. We pulled off the road near the lake, the headlights casting long beams across the water. Jonah killed the engine, and for a while we sat in silence, listening to the crickets and the gentle lap of waves. You ever wonder what it'd be like to just leave? Jonah asked suddenly, turning toward me. All the time, I admitted, my voice low. "Then let's do it. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but someday soon. We'll pack up, hit the road, and never look back." The thought was intoxicating. I pictured us somewhere no one knew our names. No one cared who I loved. No one controlled who I became. But just as quickly, the weight of reality pressed down. "You don't know my father," I said. "He wouldn't just let me go." Jonah leaned closer, his eyes steady. Then we stopped asking for permission. The air between us grew charged, the words hanging heavy. And then, in a moment that felt both inevitable and terrifying, Jonah reached for my hand. His touch was warm, steady, grounding me even as my heart raced. We sat like that, fingers entwined, the silence filled with unspoken promises. I didn't know that we weren't alone. A sharp beam of light cut through the darkness, slicing across our faces. I blinked against it, startled, before realizing what it was. Headlights! My stomach dropped. The car pulled up fast, gravel crunching under the tires. When the engine cut off, I recognized it instantly. My father's truck. Panic seized me. I yanked my hand back as it burned, but it was too late. Jonah sat straighter, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking toward me as if bracing for impact. The driver's door slammed shut, and then my father was there, looming in the dark, his face a storm I dreaded my entire life. His voice thundered across the still night. "Caleb, out of the truck. Now!" My legs trembled as I slid from the passenger seat. The cool air hit my skin, but my body burned with shame and fear. Jonah stayed where he was, his shoulders squared, but I could see the defiance in his posture. "What the hell is this?" my father demanded, gesturing sharply toward Jonah. "You sneak around behind my back for him? This is what you've been lying about." I opened my mouth, but the words tangled in my throat. "Dad, it's not." "Don't lie to me," he barked, his voice raw with fury. "I raised you better than this. I sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay me? With betrayal?" The words stung, sharp and merciless. Betrayal, as if loving someone, as if wanting to live my own life, was a crime against him. Jonah got out then, standing tall beside me. "With all due respect, sir, Caleb doesn't owe you his entire life. He deserves a chance to be who he is." My father's glare cut to him like a blade. "Stay out of this. You've poisoned him enough already." "He's not poisoned," Jonah shot back, his voice steady. "He's alive." The tension between them was unbearable, like a storm about to break. I stood frozen, caught between two forces pulling me in opposite directions. My father's face twisted with something colder than anger. Disappointment, the kind that seeped deeper than rage. "You're throwing away your future, Caleb. College, stability, everything I worked for." "For what?" "For him." I wanted to scream that it wasn't just for him. It was for me, too, for the person I was suffocating inside that house. But fear held my tongue. Then came the ultimatum. My father's voice was low, deliberate, each word striking like a hammer. "It's him or your family. You can't have both." The night seemed to still, even the crickets silenced by the weight of his decree. My chest constricted, my breath shallow. Jonah's eyes found mine, searching, pleading without words. I felt torn in two. On one side, the man who had shaped my entire life, who had provided but also confined, who believed obedience equaled love. On the other, the boy who made me feel alive, who saw me as I was, not as I was expected to be. Silence stretched unbearable. My father's stare burned into me, demanding an answer. Jonah's presence steadied me, daring me to choose myself. But I said nothing. My lips parted, then closed again. My father's expression hardened, as if my hesitation was answer enough. "Think long and hard, Caleb," he said, his voice like stone. "Because once you choose, there's no turning back." He turned and stalked to his truck, the slam of the door reverberating through my chest. The engine roared to life, and then he was gone, swallowed by the darkness. The silence he left behind was deafening. Jonah stepped closer, his hand brushing mine, tentative but firm. "You don't have to decide tonight," he said softly, "but you can't keep living in between. It'll tear you apart." His words echoed the truth I didn't want to face. The night had stripped away the illusion of secrecy. My father knew, and the choice I'd avoided for so long now loomed before me, inescapable. I stared at the empty road where his truck had vanished, the echo of his ultimatum pounding in my ears. "It's him or your family." For the first time in my life, I realized I could lose everything, no matter what I chose. Sleep deserted me in the days after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my father's voice, the ultimatum replaying like a curse. "It's him or your family." I walked the halls of our house in silence, my father's presence pressing against me even when he wasn't in the room. He avoided me, but his silence was louder than his anger. Meals were eaten with the clink of silverware and nothing else. Every word I didn't speak hung between us, heavy and sharp. Jonah tried to be my refuge, but even with him, the weight followed me. We sat by the riverbank, legs dangling over the edge, the water rippling with the wind. He touched my hand gently, grounding me. "You can't keep living like this," he said. His voice wasn't angry, only tired. "You're breaking in half, Caleb." I wanted to tell him I was fine, that I could balance it all if I just tried harder. But the truth was etched across my face. "If I choose you," I whispered, "I lose everything I've ever known. If I choose him, I lose myself." Jonah's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. "Then you already know the answer." For days I stalled, as if time might offer me a way out. But my father's patience had limits. One evening, as I returned from class, he was waiting for me at the kitchen table. His glass of bourbon sat untouched, his posture rigid. The air was thick with unspoken judgment. "Sit," he commanded. I obeyed, my heart thudding. "I won't ask again," he said, his voice controlled but seething beneath the surface. "Are you done with Keller?" My throat tightened. I wanted to lie, to give him the answer he wanted just to buy more time. But the words wouldn't come. All I managed was a whisper. "No." His hand slammed against the table, the sound jolting through me. "Then you're no son of mine." The finality in his tone cut deeper than any insult. I felt something inside me splinter, but at the same time, I recognized the truth. I had already lost him long ago, in the years of silence, control, and fear. I stood, legs unsteady, but I didn't back down. "If being your son means killing who I am, then maybe you're right." His eyes narrowed, a storm of rage and grief colliding, but he said nothing more. He turned away, his silence sealing the distance between us. That night, I packed a small bag, clothes, a notebook, the bare essentials. Jonah picked me up without asking questions. His old truck smelled faintly of gasoline and pine, and for once, the hum of the engine sounded like freedom. We drove with no destination, the town shrinking behind us with every mile. I stared out the window, my chest aching with loss and relief all at once. Jonah glanced at me occasionally, his hand brushing mine on the seat between us, a silent promise that I wasn't alone. We stopped at a diner, just past the county line. The neon sign flickered, casting a strange glow over the cracked parking lot. Inside, the coffee was lukewarm, the pie too sweet, but I tasted freedom in every bite. Jonah leaned across the booth, studying me. "You okay?" I let out a shaky laugh. "No, but maybe I will be." We sat there until the sun began to rise, painting the horizon in shades of gold and pink. For the first time, the future felt uncertain, but it also felt like mine. Still, the ache of betrayal lingered. Not my betrayal of my father, but his of me, his refusal to see me, to love me as I was. That wound would take longer to heal than I cared to admit. But as the morning light spilled across the world, I realized healing was possible. Jonah reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. "Whatever comes next," he said softly, "we'll face it together." I nodded, my throat tight. I didn't know where the road ahead would lead us, or if we'd stumble, fall, or get lost along the way. But I knew this. I'd chosen love, and in doing so, I had chosen myself. As the sun rose higher, I thought of my father's words. "It's him or your family." He believed he was giving me a choice, but what he never understood was that he had already made his. And so had I. I couldn't believe what my dad did when he caught me. But even more, I couldn't believe the strength I found when I finally caught myself.